So about a week ago, I posted a video about my first ever Magic the Gathering card that came into my possession. If you haven't checked it out, feel free to go check it out. But that was a really popular video. A lot of people seem to like it, even though to me it was a pretty basic thing. But if that's the kind of thing that people like me to talk about, I'm happy to talk about anything. So I figured, why not try another piece of random gaming history from my life and talk a bit about how it came into my possession and how I actually never ended up using it for anything other than to have it as a memento. So when I was younger, when I was in 7th or 8th grade, so we're talking 2000, 2001, maybe 2002, we would go to this gaming store. Well, it wasn't really a gaming store. It was a comic store that had some gaming stuff in the city that I grew up in, Lowell, Massachusetts. And it was, you know, halfway between our school in downtown Lowell and my house. I had a best friend, still one of my best friends, who lived a few blocks over from it. So it was very easy for all of us to get to, and it was one of the few shops that sold that kind of stuff in the area. I can't remember why we used to go there because none of us played Magic the Gathering at the time, although we had slowly become aware of it. We did play Pokemon and later Yu-Gi-Oh! Before we eventually got into Magic and then bigger games as we grew up through high school. But I don't remember ever buying Pokemon cards there. Maybe we did. I really can't recall. I would assume they sold them. And I know we would go there often, but never to play games there, only ever really to look around. I think it was because my friends were into comic books. I never really was, and to this day, I've never really been an avid collector of comic books. I'll pick up the occasional graphic novel, and I do like to collect Spawn comics because he's my favorite superhero. But I was never big into like Marvel or DC or any of the mainstream stuff, and so I never really collected, and a few of them did. So I think that's mainly why we would go there. But while we were there, I would always look at the gaming stuff, and I was too young and I was without anybody to really explain it to me, like what it was or what the different things were. And there were a few items. One of them I know for sure I don't have, but I can't remember if I bought this book, which I'll talk about in a minute, or this miniature first. But I remember grabbing what turns out to have been, I believe it was a 40K Chaos Space Marine biker, a single miniature that came, I mean, we're talking a while ago. This came in a cardboard box, all pewter. I remember putting it together and I had no idea what it was. I thought it was just a collectible figure. And I bought it. I didn't know how to put it together. My mom said you probably have to glue it together. So we went to like a hardware store and she bought me super glue. I glued it together. And then I talked to the guy at the store about it one day when I had gone back and I said, what is that miniature for? Like, I don't even know if I knew to call it a miniature. But I was like, what is that thing that I bought for, that model? I think I thought it was like a model car. And he said, it's for a game. You paint it and you play this game with it. So I go home and I take my model car paints, which were probably like Tamiya paints, and I just started painting right on the pewter. It came out horribly, but I had a blast with it. I have no idea where that is. It's probably got smashed into a million pieces well over 20 years ago, and it's in the trash somewhere. But one other thing that I remember buying, one of the first things I remember buying from that store, if it wasn't Magic, not Magic cards, but Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards, one of the first things I remember buying was this book right here. This is Dungeons & Dragons, I think 3.5. I want to say this is from the 3.5 edition. It might be 3rd edition. And this is the Savage Species Playing Monstrous Characters manual. You can take a look at that right there. I bought this having no idea what it was, other than I looked at the cover and I thought it looked really cool, and I opened it up and flipped through it, if it wasn't wrapped in cellophane, I can't remember. And I thought, this is one of the coolest books I've ever seen. I have no idea what it is. I thought it was like some kind of like a mythology, almost like an ancient Greek mythology that you could buy. And I used to love mythologies like Greek mythology and Norse mythology and all the different monsters and gods. I would love reading about all that stuff. And so I thought that's what this was. And so I bought it and I brought it home and I started flipping through it. And I slowly realized that it was part of a larger gaming system that I was missing all of the components to. Like, I realized that, yes, this is Dungeons and Dragons, and yes, this has rules in it for the game, and it has a lot of really cool lore too, but it's not something that you can actually play the game with. You need the Monsters Manual and the Player's Handbook and the DM Guide. And so I didn't know that at the time. And so I bought this and I brought it home and I had probably flipped through it, I don't know, dozens of times, reading little bits here and there, looking at the awesome artwork. I mean, D&D has come a long way, but the artwork has always been good. The layouts have always been similar. So you can look at a book like this and it still feels very much like a D&D book. And I can still remember these pictures, like seeing them for the first time. They look very familiar even now. And I've had this for, over 20 years, 25 years, something like that. But I've kept this ever since then. I've actually kept, I think, all gaming rule books or manuals, certainly my D&D stuff. I never ended up picking anything else up for third edition. By the time I got to the point where I had friends who would be interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons and I knew enough to teach myself how to run a game and felt comfortable doing so, I was, I want to say, nearing the end of high school, maybe just finishing high school, and 4th edition is what was out. And 4th edition, very different than 3rd edition. I think 4th edition is probably the least liked version of Dungeons & Dragons because it's such a miniatures-based game. The rules call out like grids and inches, like it's literally defined as a tabletop miniatures game as opposed to other versions of D&D that really don't think that way. They still, you know, they still have stuff like inch measurements for ranged attacks and spells and stuff like that, but they don't speak of things as if they're meant to be on a grid. Or require miniatures. I still feel like they're a bit further in that direction than they were around 3rd or 3.5. But if you don't like that, that's why like Pathfinder exists, as well as a million other RPGs that nowadays I would much rather play. But I never ended up playing 3.5. And so this book never actually got used other than to be an inspiration to me to want to play more gaming stuff and to understand what this was and how it works. I remember at that store, there were other games that we did eventually pick up and play. I remember when Mage Knight first came out, that was where we would go to get it, Larry's Comics. I remember at one point, Larry bought the shop above, because this was an underground comic store. He bought the shop above it, and he turned the upstairs shop into a skate shop, and the downstairs shop stayed the gaming and comics. And then eventually that skate shop became where he would hold Friday Night Magic. So by the time I got to high school 3 or 4 years later, and I was playing Magic the Gathering, and I would go to play Friday Night Magic, it would be at the same comic shop at Larry's Comics upstairs in the skate area where he had all his tables laid out. Eventually, some years later, he ended up losing the lease to that place, and he had to move. And I think he did actually move over to Chelmsford or something like that, another town in the area. He might still have a shop. I'll have to go look it up one day and see if he's still around. But that was really my first gaming store. It wasn't my like home gaming store. That was a store in Chelmsford called Three Trolls Games and Puzzles, which I can talk about in another video. And they have also since moved. Actually, one of the 2 owners has passed away. It was a father and son. The father passed away. The mother also worked there too. It was really a family business. They were the Three Trolls. And then the father passed away and the son moved the business from that building, I think, again, because of like not tenant issues, but like they didn't want to extend their lease, which is crazy because they had been there for so long. That store is actually where my mom bought my first pack of Pokemon cards, the starter deck, like 2-player box when the game first came to the US. And then when I decided to try to get into tabletop gaming, I thought I was going to play 40K, and just as I showed up, this was when I was 18 or something, so this was like 2006, I showed up, I had bought a Tau army, I had built it and painted most of it, and I showed up and they were like, oh, we're not playing 40K anymore. This awesome new game just came out called War Machine and Hordes. And so I played that for a very long time and was very serious about that, and have probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on it. I have a tattoo related to it. So that was my real home game store, and it's since moved, and I haven't been to the new location yet because I've moved away. Not far, but far enough that it's not in my path on a daily basis. But my very first store was Larry's Comics, and this is one of the very first things I ever bought there. Might have been the first thing I ever bought there, actually. Then bought a bunch of Mage Knight and not HeroClix, but there was a game that used the HeroClix base system. I think Mage Knight and HeroClix are the same company. I think they're WizKids. But Mage Knight, and there was a Mage Knight based or a Clix based game that came out that was Mech Warrior. I bought some of that. Those were my first sort of foray into tabletop miniature war games, and then got into real miniatures later. But yeah, so this is one of the oldest things that I own. This is about the same age. Actually, I should open it up and take a look. This is definitely about the same age as the time that I got that Magic the Gathering card. This is, let's see, when was this printed? There we go. Wizards of the Coast. First printing, February 2003. Yep, so right around the same time. I started high school fall of 2022. So I picked this up as a freshman in high school. Not knowing what it was. Now, having never used it, but we'll always keep it. And that's cool. So anyways, just wanted to show this off. Again, trying to feel out what people want me to talk about on this channel. I want to talk and I want to make videos. That's what I'm here for. I'm not necessarily here to preach about anything or teach about anything or talk about any specific topic. I just like talking to people and I love making videos. And so if I can find stuff that you guys are interested in me talking about, whether it's showing off stuff like this or answering questions or talking about games, teaching games, talking about wardrobes or trying to be a better father or a better husband or being, you know, rooted in your faith or whatever it is, I'm happy to talk about whatever or all of it. I don't care. To me, it's all just one intermingled, interconnected mess. But anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to talk about more gaming type stuff or nerdy stuff or faith stuff or whatever you want. And I might as well start saying it. If you like the channel, subscribe so I know that you like the channel. And then let me know what you want me to make more videos about, and I will. I'm obviously trying to grow this channel to the point where it's successful. And by successful, I mean I can make videos and maybe get a little something out of it. That would be awesome. But at the very least, I want the videos to be watched because that's the whole point, right? I like making them. I like interacting with the people who watch them. And if people aren't watching them and aren't interacting in the comments down below, then I don't get to talk to people. Talking to the camera is fun. And I hope for you watching me talk to the camera is fun, but talking to you would also be fun. So comment, subscribe, like, or dislike, you know, let me know. I can use the metrics to home things in. But anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed and I will see you in the next one.